Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, while not getting the harsh sentence the Crown was seeking, are still victims of evil and lawlessness from our thoroughly broken Canadian judicial system. Our prime chameleon, Maximum Carnage, goes all elbows down in maple MAGA glory as he drools over Donald Trump in a turnaround that would cause your head to spin off and fly into space. Our federal government decides to resurrect another online tyranny bill aimed at boxing people out of the online public square if they are a fringe minority with unacceptable views. We live in a land of injustice, the false north, weak and enslaved. It's October 10th. I'm Andrew DiBartolo. That's Matt Halleck, and this is Liberty Dispatch.
Hey there, friends, and welcome back to Liberty Dispatch. It is great to be joined by you once again. This is Liberty Dispatch, where you get all your Canadian conservative news and analysis that's unapologetically Christian, that you can't get anywhere else. So if you like what we do, please do what you can do to get our show into the hands, ears, eyes, whatever it might be, of your friends, your families, even your enemies, perhaps your liberal enemies. We would really appreciate it. So you can get all our content over at ldcanada.substack.com. That's ldcanada.substack.com, where we have a bunch of wonderful interview episodes that you're not going to want to miss. Full episodes are behind the paywall. You can get access to those, as well as ones that are coming up here as we head towards our 350th show. We're going to be having some guests on the show that you're going to want to be able to see the extended cut podcast interviews with. So get over there, ldcanada.substack.com. We also are, just to remind y'all, on the Fight Laugh Feast Network, flfnetwork.com. So check us out there, as well as the many other wonderful shows over there. Andrew, dude, great to be with you again.
Here we are. It's a good day
for another ride.
It's a good day and it's a bad day.
Yes.
It's a happy day and it's a sad day. Yes. I just went Dr. Seuss. I hope you can deal with it. So yeah, good to be covering some of these stories. Mm-hmm. Obviously a little unsettled to bring some of these other stories, but that's what we do here. We talk about what's happening in Canada, and we approach it from a biblical perspective, not a squishy evangeli fish mainline perspective.
Andrew,
but from a biblical perspective.
These stories are so important, right? Like, we've kind of talked about how it seems like Canadians have kind of been lulled to sleep. They were fired up. They were galvanized during the lockdowns. We're going to be talking about the trucker convoy and how Canadians were waking up. But it seems like there's a lull that's kind of gone over our country. And that's the worst time for it, because our government has not stopped its decided efforts at stealing the rights and freedoms of Canadians.
Yeah, it's active and overt tyranny has been replaced by a secretive undercurrent of tyranny through executive order and legislation and other forms of judicial lawlessness. And we want to talk about some of those because, as John Carpe said in a recent post or recent podcast he did with the JCCF, Canada is moving toward becoming a tyrannical state, and moving more and more like we are moving toward a police state, and our liberties are fragile if we don't fight for and protect them. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And not only are liberties fragile, not only is our judicial system just upside down and inside out, but our financial system is seriously flawed, shaped by what is an unquestionable, morally decadent society. Central banks repress interest rates and print money. Politicians spend recklessly, and big firms promote questionable ESG agendas. However, your investments don't have to suffer. Rocklink helps Canadians like you invest wisely for the future. Contact them easily at info@rocklink.com. That's info@ROCKLINC.com. So the big news a couple days ago, we're going to set this up, a little bit of history for those of you who, I don't know, you were asleep for a year in Canada. But Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, two of the main Freedom Convoy organizers, they were arrested on February 17th, 2022. That was a Thursday. I remember seeing the videos. I'm sure many of you remember seeing the videos of Tamara Lich late at night in the snow being arrested. And a bunch of us actually arrived in Ottawa just a day later. So they were put through what is the longest mischief trial in Canadian history for organizing a peaceful protest and family-friendly 3-week event in Ottawa. They were found guilty of mischief this past April. The Crown was seeking 7 and 8 years in prison for the two of them, respectively. On Tuesday, October 7th, 2025, they finally received their sentences. Now, here is a summary of their sentences from LifeSite. Barber was given an 18-month conditional sentence with a concurrent 3-month sentence for counseling disobedience of a court order to be served in the community, i.e. house arrest. Lich was given 18 months less time already spent in custody, amounting to 15 and a half months. Both must remain in residence for the first 12 months, except for medical emergencies, appointments, and employment, but are permitted to leave for necessities for up to 5 hours once a week. They were also given a curfew and 100 hours community service, close quote. Ontario Court Justice, or I should say Ontario Court Injustice, Heather Perkins McVeigh said, quote, "They came with the noblest of intent and did not advocate for violence," close quote. Perkins McVeigh rejected both the Crown's proposal of 7 and 8 year sentences and the defense argument for absolute discharge, alleging that a discharge would, quote, "send the wrong message," close quote, and would, quote, "undermine confidence in the administration of justice," close quote. The federal government did that all on their own. Justice Perkins McVeigh said both Barber and Lich consistently emphasized peacefulness during the protest, saying there was, quote, "no evidence that either called for violence against people or property and, in fact, asked for everyone like that to be reported to police," close quote. She also stated that they also tried to reach a, quote, "good faith agreement to reduce the footprint of the protest," close quote. The justice also said this was a, quote, "non-violent protest. There was no property damage, no intent to harm critical infrastructure," close quote, saying Lich was, quote, "peaceful and lawful," close quote, throughout. Yet, Perkins McVeigh stated that all of this, quote, so everything we've just said, her admission, it was totally peaceful, no calls for violence, no property damage, no none of that stuff. Perkins McVeigh stated that all of this, quote, "did not absolve them of their liability. Mitigating and aggravating factors are important in a sentence," close quote. So, Matt, the question I have for you, or the task that I place before you, is help us make sense of what appears to be like an admission that they did nothing wrong, but they're still wrong. Okay? They were still wrong and they're still guilty, but they did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
How do we make sense of that?
Well, I mean, it's hard to make. You gave me a big task because it's hard to make sense of it. But I do think, we're right in pointing out this is a miscarriage of justice, because all the things that she just laid out are indeed the reasons why there should be no
Yeah.
further
And they're the reason.
sentencing.
I'll just jump
especially
in quickly. They're the reasons why the emergency, the reasons why the War Measures Act, the invocation of the War Measures Act, commonly known as the
was
Emergencies
totally
Act,
ludicrous.
and was deemed unconstitutional by judges. So there's
Yes.
there was no reason for it. We know that now. So right, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. It is the wild, wild west.
Mm-hmm. And so it seems like, okay, so the Injustice McVeigh is, or Perkins McVeigh is kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, right? She's caught in a catch-22 apparently, right? Because she has what was a very public case, very publicly reported upon in a very negative light. The Trudeau regime had spent so much time and effort and taxpayer money at litigating these two individuals into the dirt. So she feels on one hand that, okay, so yes, sure, all the evidence points to the fact this was a peaceful, law-abiding protest. They were working in good faith with law enforcement, even mitigating some of the
They were
size
not
of the
the
protests.
ones. They were not the ones that were stopping the trucks from being able to be relocated to other parts of Ottawa. That was
Right.
the police. That wasn't them.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, okay, they're engaged in this massive, never before seen protest that is directly targeting the lockdowns. They're communicating their intent, as we will see in a video with the interview with the lawyer, to police the entire time, and they're doing this all in good faith. Yet they've already been in jail, both of them, for a period of time.
Yeah, Barber was 3 days, I believe,
Yep.
something like that, and Lich served something
three
like 40,
months? Yeah,
42 days, 42 days, something like that in prison. I
Yeah.
could be wrong on the specifics, but it was in the 40s, and he was low single digits. But
Yeah,
still,
So they already spent time in jail. They've already gone through this, like, the punishment is
the
the
trial
process.
lasted 1,400 days. That's how long the trial lasted.
They probably spent over hundreds of thousands of dollars on all of these fees and everything. The punishment is the process, like, as many lawyers say. So Perkins McVeigh finds herself in a tough situation because, on one hand, all the evidence points to, okay, they should go off. They should get off. Especially, I think I haven't read the full statement, but I do think the fact that the invocation of the War Measures Act, or the Emergency Act, so called, that the fact that it was deemed unconstitutional should play a role in the way. Like that should be a factor in the decision. Is the government was always overreaching and insane. Now, the hard place is, she says, well, if she lets them off scot-free and then she feels like people will do this sort of thing, which is their constitutional right, with impunity, which would be bad in her eyes. And I think more she points to the fact that it would maybe undermine the people's confidence in the government, because of the way they proceed the case.
People like Zexy Lee would be so upset.
So she's worried that if she doesn't give him at least a slap on the wrist, that people are going to do this with impunity, and it's really going to expose how totally, utterly insane the government is. So I do think in some cases there is a win here, right? Obviously, it's house arrest for just over a year. It is technically a slap on the wrist. I do think it sets a bad precedent. The lawyer will get into that, and he'll be able to do a better job explaining that to me, or than me. But my point is, the win is just how far short of the Crown. Like, the Crown looks totally petty and insane in the fact that for a mischief sentence, that is spurious at best. They were pursuing 7 and 8 year charges, and
we
all
still
they were
don't know what
able
they're
to
going to do to
main.
the truck. They wanted to
Well,
take Barber's truck and decommission, so we still don't know what's happening there. It's the
yeah,
last I've checked.
which is the main capital good that he uses in employment. So I mean, the crown has gone totally and utterly insane. And I think even Perkins McVeigh, the one that does come across, it does come across like the crown so far overshot what was even remotely reasonable in this case that it's almost hard to imagine how they could do that. Like, that's a level of malice and pettiness and incompetence that is hard to believe. And they spent tons and tons and tons of taxpayer money litigating what amounts to a peaceful protest. And Andrew, that's all the while violent, disruptive protests happen.
Yeah, we did a whole episode
Canada
on murderers and rapists and sexual offenders who got lesser sentences than even the crown was seeking for Barber and Lich.
Yeah, but even the ongoing, well, maybe it's not continuous sit-in type thing where like this was, but the ongoing relentless nature of these paid protests in city
it is
centers
ongoing
across
though. It's like every weekend.
Yeah, right.
Stuff's like getting damaged. It is ongoing. It has been
and there's been way more property damage. There's been way more violence, and it's been
we're 2 years now.
Yeah,
2 years of these.
There were sit-ins,
pro Hamas,
and there were sit-ins on university campuses and stuff like that. So the fact that there is such a large divide in how these are mitigated does that's the story here. I think the real story here is the crown and their utter insanity of what they were going for ideal sentencing, and how far that was off the
it's
actual
because
sentence.
petty tyrants don't like it when you defy them, right? So
I was chatting with someone about this. Of them, right? They wanted to make an example.
This has always been the case, right? This is why it's funny. In my history class, we were looking at for anyone who's at all familiar with pre-Reformation history, Girolamo Savonarola is a kind of proto-reformer in Italy who's calling out the decadence of the Roman Catholic Church, who's calling out the corruption in Pope Leo VI, I believe, who was unmarried but yet had 5 illegitimate children with multiple women. So here he is, and he's kind of in the same way he's criticizing the church rightly, and they ask him to recant, so they inquisition him, and they basically go back and forth. They punish him to the point of death. He confesses, and then he says, no, that was in a moment of weakness, I take it back. And then they go through these cycles of torture and ease as he keeps confessing and then unconfessing. And then finally, him and his 3 friends, they strangle them, they hang them, and they strangle them, and then they burn their bodies after they're dead, and then they spread their ashes in a river. And I was telling the kids that this is what they did to this man. And I said, the reason is they're trying to make an example of him, saying to everyone else watching, if you do this, if you do what he did, this is what we're going to do to you. Like, if you dare question us, we will treat you the way we treated this man. So that's true. My hot take on the decision for,
and that's always Andrew, before you move on, that's always what tyrannical governments do. Throughout the history, tyrannical governments want to prove a point to their citizenry that they're ultimately in control. So they will stick heads on pikes. They will go above and beyond to prove that they are the ones in control, which is usually a sign of tyrannical leadership and tenuous leadership.
Destroy Barber's truck. That's exactly why they destroyed his truck, for that reason.
Yeah,
to make an example. We'll come for you and your livelihood.
Yeah.
So my quick hot take on the sentencing is, I think that what it communicates is, one, we can't. Justice Perkins McVeigh knew she couldn't sentence them too strongly, not because she's particularly principled, but because I think she knows that it would be bad news in the broader public. Like, I know people who are ready to legitimately make their way to Ottawa if these two are going to be in prison for years and years. And so I think that the public opinion on this, I don't think it would have been good. I think we would have seen some actual kind of response from Canadians, and I think they're perceiving that response. So you don't want that. At the same time, you don't want people to think that they can just up and protest and express their kind of their displeasure with the state. You don't want them thinking they can do that, even though it's their right. So essentially, what this communicates to me is a slap on the wrist, and but it's a slap on the wrist like this: you've been a naughty boy and girl. Don't you do it again. And also the other siblings and the siblings are in the room. In this case, this is the rest of Canadians, right? Don't you do it again. And to the rest of you, don't you do this either. Don't follow in your brother and sister's footsteps. You don't be like them, because if you do, you'll get in trouble, right? It might not be the serious trouble I said you were going to get in, but be afraid that it might be for you. That's what this is to me. This feels like a sad parent who who's saying to their kids, "You've been bad. Don't do this. If you do it again, it might be worse. And if any other of you think that you can do this and get away with it, you will not." But they obviously can't go all the way, because I think it would have been really bad. I think it would have been really bad. I think people legitimately would have. It would have been problematic. I think people would have seen this as probably the most gross miscarriage of justice maybe in Canadian history.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are a few things that come to mind, like Carla Homolka making a deal, and then when she receives her deal, she turns over the tapes, and they realize she was more involved, and she was probably the brains behind it, and Paul Bernardo was just the dummy. But things like that, this would have seemed like that. This would have seemed like an absolute travesty of justice and a wicked and immoral. And I don't think a whole lot of Canadians would have stood for it, and I think they know that too. So that's what I think this sentencing is. It's that, don't you do it again
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing.
But in one sense, do it like, I mean, I know it's been rough for Barber and Leach, but I think at the end of the day, what they did in the way that they did it is a standing rebuke against the
She was
tyranny of the state. So it's totally
yeah, but
worth it.
before we show the video, I was reading something where Leach was talking with her lawyer, who we're about to see, and back when they were convicted, knowing that sentencing was coming up, her and her lawyer were having a discussion about apologizing, like saying sorry for doing this, because oh no, I was reading Tamara Leach. She posted on Substack, and she said, I was talking with my lawyer about apologizing, that if I say you say you're sorry, you might get a lesser sentence. And she said, what would I say I'm sorry for? Sorry for the thousands of Canadians that didn't commit suicide because of the hope they felt when we organized the convoy. Sorry for the people now who are actually able to spend time with their elderly relatives who didn't have to die alone. So she basically listed off all these good consequences that came out of the Freedom Convoy. And she said, I would rather spend 100 years in jail than ever say I'm sorry for it. Like that's,
Yeah.
and I read that, and I almost screenshotted it and shared on social media. I'm like, now if only the spineless hirelings that call themselves pastors and elders had the guts that this woman does to actually fight for
Mm-hmm.
their sheep against the wolves and against the
Yeah,
thieves,
really.
how much better the church in Canada would be. It's pretty pathetic. And this isn't a slight against her, but
Mm-hmm.
this is definitely shameful for thousands and thousands of men across this country who are supposed to be under shepherds guarding and fighting for their sheep, and they essentially watch their sheep die and become crushed by a tyrannical state and did nothing about it.
Yeah.
So kudos to Lich.
And we know for a strong fact that saying sorry never appeases the mob. It never appeases Marxist mobs. It just actually vindicates the reason that they should actually go at you. So not only is she being principled, but she's also being pragmatic and prudent in the fact that that's going to do nothing but, put the target over your back and give them a talking point. Oh, she even had to say she was sorry for all that she did. So anyways, let's hear really briefly from their lawyer, because I think we talk a lot on the show, Andrew, about precedent. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand in the legal system. It does matter. So even kind of minute, small wins and losses can actually play a big role in Canadian jurisprudence. Now we are, as you talk about, in this horrible state when it comes to lawfare in Canada, that, I mean, it feels like we shouldn't think too much about it because the judges will just do whatever they feel like.
Well, this is why, just really quickly, this is why all of the pastors who were charged with violating the Reopen Ontario Act or being in contempt of court, or Derek Sloan or Randy Hillier, all of them, and I just read earlier that all of Hillier's charges have been stayed. Now, fine, that's all done.
Yeah,
all of the charges against them were stayed, which was the government's way of saying, okay, you know what, we're not going to actually go to court. And a lot of people, I think, rejoice. Which, I mean, it's good that you don't have to spend the time and the money and then, be under the threat of imprisonment, that the charges are stayed. But it's actually bad because nothing actually went to trial and no decision was made. Because if it went to trial, then the judge would be forced to have to say to, like, Randy Hillier, you're guilty, you're innocent.
Yeah.
So the fact that these didn't go to trial, but all the charges were stayed, which means in our system and with legal precedents, there is no precedent that has been set that anyone has been found innocent or that anyone has been justified for defying the lawless mandates. So it actually there's nothing we can look back on in the future and say, oh, no, but look, like in the United States, they have plenty of this. But here, there's not a single instance where we can look back and say, no, when the state oversteps in a health crisis, look, we've been vindicated for doing what we did. We don't have that. We have zero of that in our country.
Yeah, because they were sly in the way that they put these things through. And that's where, when I said the punishment is the process, that's essentially what they've gone with. And they've been quick to scurry away from cases that they aren't 100% sure that they can win. But let's listen to the lawyer's take on this whole situation.
Do you consider that there might be, regardless of the cause, there might be a difference of enforcement on future protests of similar scale?
Well, yeah, I mean, the police in this case invited and then directed the truckers as to where to park and where to be. And although there was some question about, well, they stayed longer than they were supposed to, that was never the case. The evidence was very clear that the authorities were well aware of their intention to stay until such time as the mandates were revoked. And so neither the duration nor where they were directed to go should have been an issue. And it's been clarified that even the removal of trucks to reduce the footprint was something that was stopped not by the Freedom Convoy organizers, but rather stopped by the chief of police.
So are we a freer country or less free country today, thanks to all this?
We're not doing as badly as there are south of the border, but the decision to convict Tamara Lich for mischief for what she did in the name of peaceful assembly and freedom of expression is something that we're looking very seriously at challenging further on.
Do you think there's been a double standard with how the truckers have been treated with jailing, prosecution, enormous resources compared to the pro-Hamas protests that blocked streets in Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, and elsewhere? Is there a double standard on the streets?
I think that this case on its own demonstrates the conflict between freedom of expression and peaceful assembly, and as contrasted with some of the other protests that you're referring to, the pro-Palestinian protests. There's definitely a different way that those are being treated as opposed to the way that this peaceful assembly and freedom of expression was treated in this courtroom.
What do you think the post effects will be? I mean, even if you might be happy with the results as of now, what do you think this takes the feeling of free speech going forward? The process, of course, of pre-trial.
I'm concerned that going forward, individuals who advocate peaceful assembly, and that's all that Tamara did, was talk about peaceful assembly and encourage people to come to Ottawa to assemble peacefully and lawfully. That's all she did. And if that becomes, and at this point, it remains criminal, it's been found to be the offense of mischief. If that's allowed to stand, then I'm very concerned about the future of freedom of expression in this country.
Lawrence, you're appealing Ms. Lich's conviction? You intend
We're seriously considering an appeal of the conviction for mischief.
So there you go. The fight is not over, but he understands the importance of the precedent. And the concern is that though this amounted to just a slap on the wrist and it fell far short of the 7 to 8 year sentence that the Crown was looking for, that by convicting somebody on the books of having a peaceful, good faith protest, they're still being charged pretty severely for mischief, is something that has dangerous downstream consequences. So, Lord willing, they will be able to appeal, and that appeal will be upheld.
Inflation through the roof.
Food costs went up 10.6% in February.
Censorship of dissident voices, freezing of bank accounts.
Justin Trudeau invoking emergency powers against the truckers. Banks can now freeze their personal accounts, the accounts of anyone linked to the Freedom Convoy.
Digital surveillance and communism spreading.
What do we want?
Basic income!
With the basic income, and I felt a sense of security because I didn't have to worry about not going hungry, and I didn't have to worry about being kicked out of my apartment.
The government is on the verge of bankruptcy, and they're coming for your money.
Canada's federal debt increasing in real time, now surpassing $1.2 trillion. This debt is draining taxpayer dollars, with interest alone costing $54 billion this year.
It's time to break free and start saving in money they can't take from you. Since 2013, the folks at Bull Bitcoin have one mission: destroy central banking. Bull Bitcoin is the most trusted Bitcoin company in Canada. They empower you to buy, sell, and pay bills with Bitcoin. They are 100% non-custodial, which means that you always maintain full control over your Bitcoin, allowing you to reclaim your financial sovereignty and secure your wealth for the future. Their customer support will assist you throughout the whole process, helping you get your hands on the hardest money ever created. Escape their financial gulag, click on the link below, and start buying Bitcoin today. Well, everyone, our prime globalist, Marx Commie, met with U.S. President Donald Trump in the Oval Office, and as you would expect, Carney looked like a sad dog basking in the aura of Donald Trump, being made to look like a fool, like right to his face.
Andrew, I watched it live, and it was just, it was pretty pathetic.
He was powerless to do anything but remain elbows down like the spineless jellyfish that he is. Here's a cut of the conversation where Trump has no problem flexing on Carney, and Carney either has to laugh uncomfortably or fiddle with his pants and look around, hoping someone will listen to him and care that he's even in the room, which they don't.
Andrew, before I play it, I'm pretty sure the stat was Carney had just about 90 seconds of speech in what amounted to a 30-minute presser. Mm-hmm. So it just tells you who's the alpha dog in the room.
And 20 of those seconds he actually had to beg Trump for. He's like, "Oh, but Donald, please, let me say something. Can I please say something? Can I please say something? Please let me say something."
Yeah.
And then Donald said, "All right, everybody, it's time to listen to this guy, and it's going to be beautiful and big."
Oh,
have a
man.
listen.
Yeah. Anyways, it was hilarious. So we will play. This will be extended clip, but it'll give you a good flavor of what took place in the Oval Office just a couple days ago.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. It's an honor to have the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who I have made very popular. He's an extremely popular Prime Minister, and I'm very honored to do it because I liked him right from the beginning. I've liked him, and we've had a good relationship.
I love that he took
we
credit
have
for
some natural
Carney getting
conflict, but we'll probably work that out. But we've had a very strong relationship, and but in the meantime, we'll spend some time and we'll make some deals and we'll do some things that are good for both of our countries. And Mark, it's an honor to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. If I may, you kindly hosted me and some of my colleagues a few months ago, and I said at the time, you are a transformative president. And since then, the transformation in the economy, unprecedented commitments of NATO partners to defense spending, peace from India, Pakistan through to Azerbaijan, Armenia, disabling Iran as a force of terror. And now, and I'm running out of time, but this is in many respects the most important.
The merger of Canada.
No.
That's the best line. That's the best line in the whole thing. Oh man, when he said that, I just lost my mind because it's actually funny. It was off the cuff and it was so funny.
And it's amazing. That's exactly how Mark Carney was talking about Donald Trump while he was campaigning, right? Donald Trump is a transformative president that has made his country's economy better, that's actually a force for international peace treaties. That's what he was saying, right?
Yeah.
No, that's not what he was saying. That's not what he was saying at all.
Yeah, that's not what the Liberal government said for like the last 5 years.
Clump of goo. He is a clump of goo.
Well, Andrew,
he indeed is the prime chameleon.
Interesting because he looks so weak, so uncomfortable. Because it is so obviously elbows down with Mark Carney. He's a brown noser, a butt kisser. The liberal media in Canada is trying to buy it back. And how are they trying to buy it back? Well, you see, transformative could mean one of many things. It's really a backhanded compliment. But if you actually play the clip in its entirety, he goes on to list a bunch of things that would really you say Donald. Those are bad things or good things? So clearly the implication and the connotation is that Donald Trump is good, is transformative for the good. That's the implication. If it's slimy and backhanded, well, that's on Mark Carney. Let your yeses be yes and your no's be no. Have a backbone if you're going to go in there. But I mean, this is all before the cameras. And I think as we'll get into some of the more deeper in the conversation here, the one thing that a lot of people have not brought up, like, especially from the Canadian perspective, oh, Mark Carney, he's the Donald Trump whisperer. He's playing Donald Trump. Just look at all the things that he's doing. The one who's playing the other is Donald Trump. Trump is buttering up Carney the entire time because he knows Mark Carney is a very small man with a massive ego. And Trump is just feeding the ego in front of the cameras while in the back room he's got him bent over a barrel.
Again, we want Canada to do great, but you know, there's a point at which we also want the same business. We're competing for the same business. That's the problem. That's why I keep mentioning one way to solve that problem is a very easy way, but we're competing
again. So the implication, very easy way, merge with the United States.
Yeah,
we're a direct competitor.
Join us, and you will be more powerful than ever. Someone should do that. Someone, please, if you're watching this, maybe I'll do it. I think what I'll do is see Trump will be like, "What we need is to merge our countries together, and if you join me, you will be more powerful than ever." Yeah, that's what's going on here.
I mean, it's hilarious. Super, super funny.
And Mark Carney reminds me a little bit of a whiny, pathetic Hayden Christensen. It's actually, I think it works. I think that's what we're seeing here.
the same business. He wants to make cars, we want to make cars, and we're in competition. And the advantage we have is we have this massive market. So it's a, it's
You
a
don't
little
say,
advantage.
Donald.
If we didn't win this election, if we had these people that were running,
Listen to this part, by the way, right to his face.
I would have also said they have a massive advantage, not only because their market's like over 10 times bigger than ours, but they also have way less taxes, way less regulation, way less red tape, and it's getting lesser by the day because of the things that Trump's doing. So the Americans are they're far better off than us Canadians. So if there's a competition, it's not much of one.
I got to set up the next little bit here. So Trump is about to say some things, and he's going to say them right to Mark Carney's face. And everyone needs to realize two things. Number one, Mark Carney has a daughter pretending to be a boy. Okay, so Mark Carney's a daughter who's pretending to be a boy. And everything that Trump is about to say would have been destructive to the United States is everything that Mark Carney and the Liberal Party stand for and want to implement. And so what Trump's about to say essentially is, could you imagine if our country
it's like Canada
was ruled by someone like Mark Carney? I couldn't even think if Mark Carney were the president here of the United States, our country would be ruined. We wouldn't even have a country left. So isn't it good that we won and not someone like a Mark Carney? Isn't that a good thing? That's what, and it's just, it's like 100%. Carney sitting there the whole time, like, wait a minute, I like those things. Those are good things. Those are my things. I want to do those things.
No.
Wait a minute, this is a bad thing? I thought this was a good thing. This is, Justin, isn't this a good thing, Justin? Klaus, isn't it a good thing? Klaus is supposed to be a good thing. Don't worry, I told you it's going to be a good thing. Just, we have to, anyways, go take this, this is great.
That we're ruining our country, destroying our country with their open borders and men playing in women's sports and transgender from everybody and windmills all over the place. If we allowed that to go on for another couple of years, we would be, I'm not sure that we'd even have a country.
On China, what more can the United States and Canada do together to counter China?
Well, you have to be able to compete. They're a great competitor. And Mark and I both know that. And you have to be able to compete. We have big advantages over China for lots of different reasons. And I think we're doing very well with China. I get along very well with President Xi. I'm going to be meeting him in a few weeks, as you know. I'll be meeting him in South Korea. But we've had a very good relationship for a long time. But you have to be able to compete. To do well with China, if you can't compete, you're not going to do well with China. And Canada is very competitive. I can tell you that. Canada is a very competitive country. And I think Canada's done very well over the years with China.
Yeah, we have. But we'll do better together on that.
Pause for a sec. Yeah, so notice what Carney said there, right? He said, we're going to be together, right, Donald? Right? We're not going to leave us on our own. We're going to work together, right? You're going to help us, and then we'll be able to do better. So that's pathetic. But also, I find it. This is where even Donald Trump, he is even if he's not a swamp creature by nature, he is a politician. And the reality is, I thought that his biggest criticism of us was because of the outsourced influence that China has in our country, which hasn't gone away. And one of the results of that has been the whole fentanyl issue. So I thought that was an issue, but apparently now Canada is doing well with China. What is he talking about? What doing well with China? China uses us to launder their money and as a hub for their international drug trade. China flexes on us during election time and sways elections considerably because of the influence they have over our country.
Unless if that was a backhanded compliment. You're doing well with China as in you're owned by them.
I don't think so, though. I think what he was saying is, because what he said was, we're doing well with China, right? You're doing well with China. And Carney's like, yeah, we'll be better together. I'm like, what planet are these guys living on? Doing well with China. China like kind of runs our country a little bit, like in the ground, kind of in a bad way.
Can we just
So I don't.
can we just take I mean, just take a look at Canada's side of the table and the American side of the table. You have Donald Trump, who's literally 2-time president, literally one of the most famous, well-to-do people in the world. JD Vance, an Ivy League, graduate, super sharp individual.
Served in the military.
He served in the decorated military officer. You have Marco Rubio, who's literally doing like 79 different jobs in the White House right now. He's all over the place, and he's been a long-term senator who's helped turn Florida into a conservative bastion in the United States of America. And then you also have right beside Rubio is Howard Lutnick, who's on this file and has been a very successful business owner. On Canada's side, you have Mark Carney, a 2-time central banker who drove the last time he got a gig. It was because his fame was it went before him, but it was not warranted, and he drove the UK into the ground. After taking credit for the good things that the Harper government did during the 2008 crisis. LeBlanc, who is a savvy politician, but has really done nothing. And Jolie and Anand, who are 2 mindless liberal MPs that have been shuffled around the cabinet in the liberal inner circle and have done a terrible job at every file they've been ever given. It's sad. Anyways.
President, what is Canada giving you in return? If you say Mr. Carney is going to be leaving Washington happy, what's Canada giving you in return?
Well, you'll find out, but I think the people of Canada, they will love us again. Most of them still do. If you say only 25%, I assume a lot of them, I think they love us. And you know what? I'm not the biggest hockey fan, but I like it a lot. And I watched some of the greatest hockey games I've ever. How good were those games, right?
Yeah, very good. We're coming down for the World Series, Mr. President.
Oh, good. By the way, your team is.
Is there anything the Prime Minister has done that's making it more difficult to reach a deal?
Say it.
Is there anything the Prime Minister has done that's making it more difficult or easier to reach a deal?
No, I think he's a great Prime Minister. I mean, he could represent me anytime. I will tell you, and I'm not saying that because he is a very strong, very good leader. He's a nice man, but he could be nasty. He could be very nasty. Maybe as nasty as anybody. I think Canada. Let me put it this way. I can tell you this because I deal with lots of leaders all over the world. He is a world-class leader. He's a man that knows what he wants, and I'm not surprised to see that he won the election and won it substantially, and I would think he's more popular now. He's a good man. He does a great job, and he's a tough negotiator.
So pause for a sec. Can you just rewind it a little bit and look at Carney for if I want everyone who's watching to zero in on
I like
Carney.
The pause of Carney right now.
No, but whatever. But zero in on Carney after Trump gives him that slurry of compliments, and watch Carney. He's kind of like whoa, look at me go. I'm a peacock, right? So hold on a sec. Hold on. No, rewind. Stop. Not enough. Stop.
No. You saw it there.
I know, but go back again. I got to set this up, right?
And
I want to set it up.
Very good leader.
Stop. Pause. Think of like Rodney Dangerfield. Like, hey, look at this. I'm getting all this respect all of a sudden. Hey, I'm getting all this respect. You're just like strutting. He's like, look at me go. I'm amazing.
Yeah, look at him.
You're a goof. You're such a schmuck. Anyways, let's play it. Go back. Go play it again.
Oh man, he's heating it up.
Here we go. In real time.
As anybody. I think Canada. Let me put it this way. I can tell you this because I deal with lots of leaders all over the world. He He's a world-class leader.
I
He's a
told you
man
I
that
could do
knows
it.
what he wants. And I'm not surprised to see that he won the election
He's
and won
giving
it
us a jump up and
substantially. And
dance right
I
now.
would think
Watch,
he's
look
more
at him.
popular now.
He's just holding it in.
He's a good man. He does a great job, but he's a tough
negotiator. Right now.
Oh man, it's too good. It's too
So
good.
then what's holding things up? If he's a great man and you want to do a deal with Canada, why aren't you?
Because I want to be a great man too. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
I think that laughter is from the Canadian bench.
Yeah.
They're guffawing.
You're so funny, Donald.
I think you got that one. That could have been
Oh man, it was a masterclass by Trump. It was an absolute masterclass by Trump. He buttered up Carney the entire time, while also being an alpha dog. And I can't help but think, Andrew, there is some subterfuge here, because he says he's aware of what was his first comment? I made you a popular man by me coming out and, being the foil to Canada with the tariffs. Your popularity skyrocketed. What does that tell you? It tells you that Donald Trump knows how he comes off in Canadians' minds, and he knows how him being the foil to Canada boosts the idiot liberals. So in singing Kumbaya together, Andrew, you're muted. In singing Kumbaya together, it puts Carney in a very awkward spot. Because now this guy who's supposedly a fascist, you're not only saying he's great, he's transformative in a good way, but he is saying, you're great. I like you a lot. Things are really good between us. You're a great prime minister. Well, that puts him in an awkward spot. But I mean, that's kind of the way it's gone down here, Andrew.
Maybe it proves that Trump did want Carney to win all along. He actually didn't want Polyev to win. He wanted Carney to win because he knew that Carney would probably be easier to manipulate, but also he probably knew, I remember saying this a while ago.
Yes, you did. And actually, Andrew, to your credit, while I was watching this, I was like, I think Andrew called this. I think because Donald Trump is angling in the exact same way you were angling, or you said he was angling.
He knows that that Carney's not principled, and he knows he can get more with him. But I still think that Donald Trump knew, and his advisors were telling him, that if Carney wins and he implements his policies, it will make things worse in Canada, and things get better in the States, which only benefits them.
Yeah,
the United States only benefits in their relationship with us if we continue to be weaker and our dollar value goes down and we're more needy and we're in more trouble. From a shrewd financial economic perspective, they're stronger.
Yeah. Well, and also, if the liberals do exactly what they're seeking to do with their hate speech laws, with the laws that we're going to talk about in a second, with revoking the use of the notwithstanding clause, right there, the Carney government is AG Sean Fraser is fighting the notwithstanding clause in court. All these things are going to make Canada way worse, and it's going to divide Canada more, because there's no way that Alberta and Quebec are going to be okay with the getting rid of the notwithstanding clause. Those are two of the biggest provinces that do cross-border trade to the United States of America. If they want out, and if things are going bad economically, as they are in Canada, and nothing's getting done, nothing's changed since the election, then there's a real opportunity. And I think Trump played that well. And I think it's in line with your theory. Anyways, let us continue to move on. Here is how the Canadian Pravda Corporation formerly known as the CBC, reported on the meeting itself. Carney met with the president Tuesday, but left Washington without a deal to lift U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods. While 35% tariffs on goods from Canada don't apply to those that are compliant with the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement on Trade, known as CUSMA, the steel, aluminum, automobile, and copper industries are being hit hard by the trade levels. To appease the American president, Carney dropped many of Ottawa's retaliatory tariffs, paused Canada's digital services tax, introduced border security legislation, and moved to ramp up defense spending. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc has said progress was made this week, and the two sides are working to land sector-specific deals on steel, aluminum, and energy. The pressure was on, and hopes were up that Carney would leave Washington with relief on steel tariffs or a trade deal with the U.S. with the U.S. Trade talks between the two countries had effectively stalled over the summer, so Trump's invitation was welcomed by Canadian officials, though Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who spoke to reporters after the meeting, said today's discussions were positive and substantive. He did not make an announcement on trade. And Andrew, before moving on, it must be noted that Mark Carney did not give a presser this time around in Washington. He let LeBlanc do it because I'm sure the heat would have been on him had he gone before the reporters in Washington without any deal. So he hid away as they returned to Canada. And it also should be noted that on Wednesday, when he was back in the House of Commons, he has broken Trudeau's Wednesday precedent where he stands and answers all the questions that the opposition throws at him on the Wednesday. And in fact, the first question that was asked directly at him, he did not stand up to answer, but he got a
This is
man
not
to do it.
this is also not the first time he's done
No.
this, by the way. Not the first time he's done
So
this.
Mark Carney is finding new heights of cowardice in the midst of all this.
Remember when Canada was a land of boundless promise, where families built thriving communities on faith, freedom, and hard work? A time when you leave your doors unlocked, neighbors were friends, and we sang our anthem with pride. Canada was respected worldwide, a rugged land full of resolute and virtuous people. We were builders forging farms from the untamed wilderness, raising strong families and forging our destiny. But now a shadow has fallen over our great nation. Creeping tyranny, the erosion of God-given rights, and cultural division have dimmed that bright promise. We yearn to reclaim what made us a true north, strong and free. We saw Canada's spirit cracking and wanted to do something. With Resistance Coffee Company, we saw an opportunity to build something bigger. Our nation was forged in the fires of adversity, and we saw an opportunity to help lay a foundation for a bright future, rebuild through that same commitment to hard work, courage, and the principles that made our nation great. Our mission is not just about crafting excellent coffee. It's about fueling everyday Canadians to stand resolute against the tide and rebuild the Canada we love. Our goal is to inspire a movement that rebuilds Canada on the bedrock of faith, freedom, and responsibility. Each step strengthens the resolve to reclaim our nation's proud legacy. We stand for freedom, hard work, human dignity, the rule of law, personal responsibility, the traditional family, the supremacy of God, and a resolute hope for our future. These aren't fringe values. These are the core truths that build Canada. We source specialty grade premium beans and precision roast them fresh for every batch to ensure delicious flavor in every cup. From vibrant light roast to bold dark blends, each cup is meticulously and carefully crafted, delivering unmatched quality. As a family-run Canadian company, we serve thousands with coffee and content as bold as our mission.
Great ads.
I love
Go get
that guy,
some
man.
coffee. Go get some coffee. Let's go.
I love that guy. I really do. He's such
Andrew,
a
what's
good
our
dude.
next story?
Well, we want to close with a piece of legislation that has, as of time of recording, officially passed its second reading in the House of Commons. And that is Bill C-8, the Cyber Tyranny Act, or as they're calling it, the Cyber Security Act. This is from the National Post. Quote, in spite of multiple international statements framing internet access as a human right, the Liberal government is pursuing legislation that would allow them to unilaterally quarantine Canadian citizens from the online world. Bill C-8, which is now undergoing second reading in the House of Commons, and again, I'll say as of time of recording, has passed its second reading, so it's the article's, a day old than it should be. This bill includes a provision under which Ottawa can pull internet services from any specified person. The denial of service would require only the personal order of the Minister of Industry, a position currently filled by Melanie Joly, in consultation with the Public Safety Minister, a position currently filled by Gary, whatever, I'm not going to say his last name. The guy, the brown guy that's coming for our guns, who knows nothing about guns. However you say his last name, I really don't care. He's a nobody. It doesn't matter. Gary coming for our guns.
Scary Gary is what we call
him. Gary, I want a guns of bullets in a. That's whatever. I don't care what his name is. It doesn't matter. He's a ghoul. So Bill C-8 would do this by amending the Telecommunications Act with the clause requiring telecom providers, such as Rogers or TELUS, to pull the services of any individual customer singled out by Ottawa. As the text states, the industry minister would be allowed to prohibit a telecommunications service provider from providing any service to any specified person. None of this would require a warrant, and oversight only kicks in after the order is made. Once a minister has ordered the internet of a specified person to be cut off, only then can a federal court subject the decision to judicial review.
And that's going to have really, really, really bad consequences, as we hear from our friend John Carpe. It's crazy. But let's actually, before we get there, let's read from the actual text of the bill itself. So this is from the text. Security of Canadian Telecommunications System, Order in Council 15.1, subsection 1. If the governor in council believes on reasonable grounds that it is necessary to do so to secure the Canadian telecommunications system against any threat, including that of interference, manipulation, disruption, or degradation, the governor and council may, by order and after consultation with the persons the governor in council considers appropriate, A, prohibit a telecommunications service provider from using all products and services provided by a specified person in or in relation to its telecommunications network or telecommunications facility or any part of those networks or facilities. B, direct a telecommunications service provider to remove all products provided by a specified person from its telecommunications network or telecommunications facilities or any part of those networks or facilities. Security of Canadian Telecommunications Systems Minister's Order 15.2, subsection 1. If there are reasonable grounds to believe that it is necessary to do so to secure the Canadian telecommunications system against any threat, including that or of interference, manipulation, disruption, or degradation, the minister may, by order and after consultation with the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, and with the persons the minister considers appropriate, to A, prohibit a telecommunications service provider from providing any service to any specified person, including a telecommunications service provider, and B, direct a telecommunications service provider to suspend providing for a specified period any service to any specified person, including a telecommunications provider. So there you go. Now the government, if this bill passes, the government will have unprecedented control over who can and cannot use the internet. Right now, that's not in the purview of their powers, as it should be. The government should not be able to control who can and who can't go online. That's insane. But this is exactly what the government's doing, and they're doing it as they always do, cloaked in the pretense of security and safety.
Let me tell you what I think is one of the most disturbing parts of that, what you just read. It's the governor and council may, by order and after consultation with the persons the governor and council considers appropriate. That to me is the most terrifying part, which is to say, obviously the punishment's terrible, but that line there means that the governor and council can consult with or make these decisions based on the input or the advice of whomever they consider appropriate. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Whomever they
It's
consider
so
appropriate.
broad, so vague laws,
some
bad
rabid,
law.
purple-haired, wokey tranny is
and
now
this-
can now be considered an appropriate source for you to be kicked off the internet.
Yeah. And this
That's
is
so lawless.
This is very real, given what we just talked about in our first story, Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. Look at how the Crown operated throughout that whole case. They operated in a way that was unconstitutional and lawless, but so insanely heavy-handed against their perceived ideological opponents that they were so far. They at every step they were lying, manipulating, and then as petty tyrants going so far beyond any legitimate punishment for those individuals. And these are the same individuals who now want the power to decide who can and cannot be on the internet. Like, that should frighten everybody beyond belief, because it was not only was it bad enough that they could manipulate algorithms that they were working behind the scenes to determine who can be on platforms and not on platforms, but now they're saying who can and cannot be on the internet. Let's hear from our buddy John. John Carpe does amazing work, and he's going to get into just how dystopian and insane this bill is, and the fact that it is pressing through the House as we speak. It should give Canadians great concern, and I think that's even putting it lightly.
Now, last but not least, currently before the House of Commons, we have Bill C-8, the Cybersecurity Act. This gives federal cabinet ministers the power to kick individual Canadians off the internet. The Cybersecurity Act also allows the government to acquire subscriber information and to designate any company as a designated operator, impose all kinds of rules on that company. It gives the cabinet ministers powers to demand information, which must be turned over, and expressly says there's no compensation to any Canadian individual or company that suffers losses because of a minister's order under this Cybersecurity Act. Administrative penalties for not complying with the minister's order up to $50,000 per day for individual Canadians, and up to $15 million for Canadian companies not complying with the minister's order. Now
that's scary stuff, Andrew. That is horrifyingly scary stuff. Because if we consider
$50,000 a day.
If we consider that this is basically at the discretion of the minister's discretion to shut down individuals' use or companies' use, organizations' use of the internet, and it's not, it goes into effect. It comes with fines immediately, and it's not even open to scrutiny until after the minister's opening this. They can just directly target ideological opponents, which we've seen them do. They've come after us, right? With the CBC putting target on us. Same with our friends at Ezra. And who are they using to do these things? Well, the CBC, the Canadian government, they're using things like the Canadian Anti-Hate Network that is literally like Antifa, leftist, Marxist, evil individuals who are ideologically motivated to go after individuals. And you can just imagine all the ways that they could go after people for any various range of expression if the government doesn't like it. It is insanity. And the government should never have this level of control over the internet ever. And the fact that they're going to try and do it just speaks to how insanely evil and corrupt they are.
Theoretically, a Canadian who's kicked off the internet can go to court, but for that you need $100,000 in a bank account to be used for litigation that's going to drag on for years. So practically speaking, there's not a real remedy available if under Bill C-8, if a federal cabinet minister kicks a Canadian off the internet. Politicians never take away our rights and freedoms without offering a nice sounding pretext. And so we've got the federal government saying that we need Bill C-8, Cybersecurity Act, to protect us from hackers, ransomware fraudsters, malicious cyber actors, and hostile state actors. Now, and of course, the sacrosanct national security and public safety, which of course every Canadian supports. The fact is that hacking into someone else's computer system, causing damage, are already criminal offenses. The powers are there already for the government simply to enforce the criminal code. Giving the federal government, giving federal cabinet ministers power to kick Canadians off the internet is not necessary for protecting public safety or defending our national security.
So what's going on, Andrew? Like honestly, how do we, all these stories that we're talking about, how do we make sense of this? And this is what I want to point to you before we kind of wrap up, is how do we make sense of the government coming after our guns, of the guns of law-abiding citizens, even in the face of the fact that law enforcement saying this is going to have no impact on crime. This is totally crazy. In some jurisdictions, they're like, well, if you go after this, we don't care. We're not going to enforce it. This is happening at the same time. So they're disarming the populace. At the same time, they're trying to control what can be said on the internet. And then they're trying to control who can be on the internet. Like, what are we to make of this? And why are Canadians not running around with their hair on fire?
Because most people probably haven't read 1984, and because it's because people don't realize, people do not have a good anthropology. So people believe the lie that human beings are either born morally neutral as a blank slate at worst and are, decently inherently good at best. And that kind of anthropology is to be rejected because it's not biblical. So we know that human beings aren't as sinful as they could be because God restrains and curbs the evil of men. But humans are unable to actually do good and that which honors the Lord because of the sin condition that has destroyed them. So that's one piece. The other piece is the reality that anyone who is not in Christ, according to the Lord Jesus Christ himself, is a slave to Satan, who is that person's master and father. So we live in a world where people who do not profess allegiance to Christ ultimately find themselves under the ownership, if you will, to Satan. They're slaves to him. They're slaves to sin. They're slaves to him. So why do I say all of that? Because our elected officials are not basically good people or morally neutral people who are making decisions based on how they're responding to stimulus, and they're having a wrestle between, do I do corruption? Do I give in to my sinful desires? Do I give in to the bribery? Do I give in to the self-preservation? That's not what's going on here. What's going on here is that the entire state apparatus in our country at essentially all levels has people who are making laws, who are enforcing those laws, who are appealing those laws, who are adjudicating those laws, are people who are dead to sin and enslaved to Satan's power. And ultimately, the depth of their evil is boundless apart from the grace of God in both his restraining and his saving power. So we are seeing actual tyranny, right? Tyranny, when we talk about tyranny, people think, oh, like Maoist China, or they think about the state becoming actively violent against its people. I mean, that's tyranny pressed out to the edges. But tyranny is when you have leaders who position themselves above the law and say that not only does the law not apply to them, but they also don't have to equally apply the law to citizens at their discretion. So all of that to say, friends, we exist in an actual tyranny. Like there's no, I mean, Alex and I, Alex, over Resistance Coffee and Dominion Podcast, I mean, we had this conversation a while ago that we need to stop pretending like we are not living under tyrants.
Yeah.
Definitionally, our leaders are tyrants, and Canada is now a functional tyranny where our leaders themselves are above the laws that should apply to them. Right? They don't abide by the laws that should apply to them
abundantly.
So they don't abide by the laws, and they won't be punished for breaking the laws. That they don't equally apply justice to all. That the laws that do exist to protect us, they circumvent in order to punish us. And they actually take us through processes which are lawless. So no matter how you look at it, we live in a tyranny because our entire state apparatus, due to the retreat and disengagement of the church in large part, have allowed the political realm to become overrun by pagans who have driven it into further godlessness. And here we are now where these incredible laws are being passed and this incredible lawlessness is taking place because our system and its foundations have rotted out. The termites of woke paganism and neo-Marxism have essentially eaten the foundation away. And we have leaders who are only being held back from doing more evil because of God's grace and kindness and curbing their evil, because they're only doing what their master Satan compels them to do. So that's why, like, let's stop, forget about this conservative liberal nonsense, forget about it's because of the schools. And yeah, it is because of the schools, but it's because of the schools for another reason. A deeper spiritual reality, where as a nation we have handed ourselves over to Satan. And we have turned away, rejected, and we have balked at the rulership of King Jesus. And we've opted instead, like Israel of old, to have rulers like the rest of the world and rulers like the rest of the pagans and not righteous rulers. And so surprise,
and they're always tyrants.
Here we are.
Like literally,
Here we are.
They're always tyrants. Because biblically speaking, like definitionally, a tyrant is one who has arbitrary or undelegated authority. And when you live in a world where governments view themselves as the highest authority, that there is no higher authority over, they have become the god of that system. And from our standpoint, that makes them a tyrant, because if they're the god of the system, whatever they say goes. And they're not omnibenevolent. They're not good. They're not gracious. They're not the God of all providence who's carrying all things along.
Yeah, think of the first story. Think of the story about
God alone has that prerogative. God alone has that authority.
If you think
any
about
human being that tries to take that is taking arbitrary authority that is not theirs.
If you think about the first story, what is it that Justice Perkins or Injustice Perkins McVeigh said? They haven't done anything wrong. They haven't called for violence. They haven't broken any laws. They've played by all the rules. They engaged in good faith. They coordinated with police. They did everything right. Their messaging was all right. Their activities were all right. There's no property damage, no violence to individuals. They operated in a just and righteous manner.
But the laws of the Medes and the Purds cannot be changed.
We're going to punish them for it, right? We will. Yeah. This is the inversion of Romans 13. So now you have someone, you have Tamara Lich and Chris Barber who do what is right and good, and they are punished for it. And yet those who do evil are rewarded for it. And we live in that. We live in a world where Romans 13 has been flipped on its head,
which
where
is a tyranny.
The state that is supposed to say you shouldn't be worried about doing good, right? You should only be worried when you do evil. But now in Canada, we should be worried if we do good. Doing good should concern us, and doing evil should make you think, oh, I'll be okay. They'll reward me for it. So that is a functional tyranny, friends. We are at, like, this isn't hyperbolic. We are ruled by tyrants, whether it's in the executive branch, whether it's the legislative branch in the MPs, MPPs in the Senate, or whether it's in the judicial branch in our Supreme Court. We are ruled by tyrants who are above the law, and Canada is a functional tyranny without a doubt at this point. That's the country we live in.
And the real scary part, Andrew, is the whistleblowers are all relatively small fries, right? Like, where's the conservative outrage over Bill C-8? Where like conservatives should always be out there screaming with their hair on fire about the evil that the Carney government's perpetrating on Canada. But instead, they are doing the very same thing that our leftist friends want us to do. They're just talking about the economy. They're talking about tariffs. That's all they're focusing on. And they're not in an effective way fighting back against the most concerning and evil of the plots from the conservative government, or from
Pierre Poilievre
from the Liberal government.
Pierre Poilievre posted something about Chris Barber and Tamara Lich being treated unjustly and their sentence. Like, so basically he said the right thing, and he got excoriated on X for it, because this is almost 4 years after they were arrested. That's how long it took this devil in a blue dress, this blue chameleon, this
well, he's late
this
to all
cowardly
parties.
leader, but here's the thing, he's actually not here. So he is not principled. Like when I found out that the Crown was seeking 7 and 8 years for Chris Barber and Tamara Lich, I was angry. I was incensed at the miscarriage of justice, at the travesty and the evil lawlessness that they would punish people for this. I was furious at it. And even the what they got, the fact that they weren't The fact that they're not going to be given monuments and plaques in their honor as Canadian heroes who stood and fought for the freedoms of silent Canadians when they wouldn't get up and fight for their own rights. The fact that that's not how they're being treated is a great evil and a stain upon the history of our country. And I felt that way. Man, I felt that way when they were first arrested. I saw the footage of them getting arrested on February 17th, which is why a bunch of my buddies called me up and said, "Okay, we're going to Ottawa tomorrow."
Mhm.
All right. And that was it. And we hopped in a car and we were there the next day. We were there Friday night. That was our response. But Pierre Poilievre doesn't feel that way.
Mhm.
He's not actually principled in feeling that way. He just knows. He knows now with his wet finger in the air
Yeah.
that he has to come and say they're being dealt poorly and I support them now, almost 4 years after the cuffs were put on them on that cold February night.
Exactly. No, 100%. And that's why people have rightfully called him PR Poilievre, because he's got to do his internal polling before he actually comes out with a principled stand on, or a stand on anything, not principled, obviously. And that's a very, I was shocked today, or very impressed at Trump had a presser in the White House with a group of independent journalists who have been dealing with Antifa. And they're going hard at Antifa as a domestic terror operation, even talking about calling it an international terror operation, which would essentially put it in the same place as like Hamas and other groups, right? They're on top of this stuff. Like they know what happened to one reporter in Portland 2 days ago, and they have that guy in the White House talking about his experience. They're on top of everything, and they're putting everything out there for the Americans to see. They're pursuing their enemies. They're going after them. Meanwhile, in Canada, Pierre and the Conservatives, they live under the liberal gaze the entire time. They live and move and have their being in the liberal gaze. And that's what makes them so ineffectual. That's what makes them, that's why they can never gain any ground, because they can't pursue, because they have to, like you say, put the finger in the air, figure out which wedge issues they might be able to speak on. And that's be bold as lions. And that's what we really need. We need Canadians to be bold as lions. That's why I'm happy to be in the CREC. We're a small federation in Canada, primarily in the States. But even we came behind our friends at ARPA because the BC legislature, they passed a motion basically decreeing that ARPA's no good, very bad, evil organization who's pushing all sorts of homophobia, all the buzzwords, because they're just standing on biblical principle. And we came behind them and said, it's a BC legislature that are the ones that ought to be condemned, because they're wicked and they're persecuting Christians and Christian organizations. And that's what we need more of. We need more voices speaking up, pushing back, because that's the only way we're going to be able to fight this. And then obviously doing the things that we've talked about over and over again to subvert the system, getting our kids out of the public school systems, educating them ourselves, going to good churches, taking part of the life of that community. That's how we build Christendom 2.0 in the ashes of this evil tyrannical system that is around us. But we got to wake up, Canada. It's time to wake up again. Let's get the fire in the belly like we had during the Freedom Convoy. And let's be those who are speaking up and pushing back. Like, I want to see Canadians fired up in the same way. And the answer isn't Pierre Poilievre. It is not Pierre Poilievre. So we can't go to sleep. We can't be distracted. We have to be focused. And we have to be focused on the less sexy things too. It can't just be the meetings between Trump and Carney, right? We have to understand a little bit that the things that our media is putting before our eyes are the things they want us to focus on. But what's happening underneath the surface is what we have to be thinking about. And that's why we want to bring you, especially this last story. It's such a big story. Yeah, we can't emphasize it enough. And we have to fight back because it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. Till next time, everybody. God bless.
Liberty Dispatch has been brought to you by SDG Media. If you want to stay in touch with us and all things Liberty Dispatch, join our email list, or support the show, head over to ldcanada.substack.com.